Hello and welcome back. So, for today's lecture we will be discussing degrees of freedom of a gas molecule. Now, what is degree of freedom? We know that there is if you have already studied classical mechanics, you have already learned one definition of degree of freedom, that is number of independent coordinate that describes the movement or motion of a body or motion of an object. So, for example, if this is a rigid body, something like this, we have a rigid body in hand. We know that from classical mechanics that this rigid body has 6 degrees of freedom. 3 of them are translational, 3 of them are rotational, and that is it, if it is a rigid body, right. Now, there are several other examples, we will take some other examples of that, and if there are 6 degrees of freedom associated with this rigid body, we need to have 6 coordinates that will be describing this motion completely. Or if, for example, if we fix one point in this body, so in space, so that means the body is not moving, so that particular point is not moving, that essentially means we are freezing the translational motion of this body. So, that means we take away 3 translational degrees of freedom from this body, and what is left are only the rotational degrees of freedom. So, in that case we need 3 coordinates in order to describe the motion of this body, and we know that from our classical mechanics lectures that these 3 could be, for example, 3 Euler angles, but that is not the question here. Question here is there any other alternative definition available for degrees of freedom? And it turns out that there is a thermodynamic degrees of freedom, thermodynamic definition of degrees of freedom that talks about the total number of quadratic terms in the energy expression of a system. It is a bit confusing, I know, but and you will see, I will show you very soon, I will show you some examples in which you will know that these 2 definitions are to some extent they go hand in hand, one corresponds to other. Okay. So, let us take the example. Yeah. So, let us look at it. So, what is there? Okay. First of all, there is a total classical mechanics, the definition is total number of independent coordinates, and thermodynamics is the total number of quadratic terms in the energy expression. First, let us take the simplest possible example of a free particle. Now, a free particle is only a point mass. So, that means there is no rotation associated with it, and it can travel anywhere in the 3D space. We know that. Now, in 3D in order to describe the motion of a free particle, how many degrees of freedom do we need? We need 3 degrees of freedom. So, that means 3 independent coordinates that will describe the motion of a rigid body completely. So, basically what I mean to say is any motion can be decoupled into 3 directions, 3 independent on along 3 coordinate axes, which are typically taken as x, y and z coordinate mutually perpendicular to each other, and that is it. This is very familiar to us. So, that is the classical mechanics definition. So, according to classical mechanics, degree of freedom of a free particle is 3. Now, the thermodynamic definition, what is the quadratic term in energy expression? If we write out the energy expression for a free particle, this will be, have a look at this, it will be E is equal to half m x dot square plus y dot square plus z dot square, right. Actually, I should write E t here, because this is purely the translational degrees, translational energy. And now, let us examine this expression. How many quadratic terms are there? Quadratic means a square term. How many quadratic terms? 1, 2 and 3. So, basically it is half m x dot square plus half m y dot square plus half m z dot square, and we cannot reduce it further. We cannot reduce it to 2 quadratic terms or 1 quadratic term, 3 has to be there. So, that is why the thermodynamic definition also matches, gives you the total number of degrees of freedom as 3. So, there is absolutely no conflict between the classical mechanics degree of definition and the thermodynamics definition of degrees of freedom. Second example. Yeah. So, for free particle total DOF is 3 in both definition. Second example is when we have a rigid diatomic molecule in hand. So, this is our molecule. We have let us say two masses, sorry, M1 and M2 connected by some bonding, and when we say rigid, that means the bond length is not changing, it is not vibrating. So, we take the bond length and as I0 and we write I, the moment of inertia I, capital I is equal to mu r0 square. Why it is important? We will know. Mu is the reduced mass, by the way. Mu is nothing but M1 M2 divided by M1 plus M2. I think you are all familiar with this, right. Now, how many motions are possible in this body? We can have 3 translation. Okay, we just define an axis system where the x axis goes along the molecular axis, we have the y axis here and we have the z axis here, right. So, we can have 3 translation, one is along x, one is along y, one is along z, independent of each other, of course. So, that means what I mean to say is any translation can be decomposed into 3 components in a Cartesian system, and there could be rotation. Now, how many rotations? There could be rotation about z axis, for example, it can rotate like this in this perpendicular to z axis, or it can rotate perpendicular to y axis. Let us say y axis is coming out of the surface of this, out of this surface, and the rotation will be in plane of this paper. Okay. But what about the x rotation? Because it is a molecule, we considered that the masses are point masses and the bond is, so because these are point masses, the rotation about its own axis is not considered, because the degree of the moment of inertia will be negligibly small about its own axis. The expression for moment of inertia, whatever I have written here, is for the rotation around the axis perpendicular to the molecular axis. So, that means y or z. Now, once again, so according to the classical definition, there are 3 translational degrees of freedom and 2 rotational degree of freedom. Total number of degree of freedom is 3 plus 2, or total number of degrees of freedoms are 3 translation plus 2 rotation is equal to 5. Good. Now, let us write the energy. Once again, the energy will have 2 components, one is the translational kinetic energy and one is the rotational kinetic energy. Please remember, there is no potential energy because we are considering these particles are free in space. So, there is gravitational attraction is neglected, although it is present. So, it is just E t plus E r. E t once again will be half, so sorry, it should be mu, right. Right, it has to be replaced by mu or something else. Effective mass is for rotation. I think it should be simply m1 plus m2. Huh? I'll check, and if it is not, then I'll let you know in the next class. It will be simply m1 plus m2, that is the total mass m for translation, but for rotation it will be half I omega y square plus omega z square, where the rotation speed about y axis and z axis is given by omega y and omega z respectively. Now, once again, how many quadratic terms? 1, 2, 3 here and 1, 2 here. So, altogether total number of degrees of freedom once again is 5. So, even for this case, the classical mechanics definition and the thermodynamic definition, they tally. Now, let us take another very simple example of a one dimensional spring mass system. We all know this, right? We have all studied this in our school days, starting from our school days, the simple harmonic oscillator. K is the spring constant, m is the mass, and there is only one motion possible, there is no translation, no rotation, 1d, that is constrained to move on one plane only, and the only motion possible is the vibration. Now, according to the classical mechanics definition of if we just consider the number of independent coordinates, x is sufficient, where x is the displacement from this equilibrium position. Let us say this is my equilibrium position, it can go like this or like this. So, actually x could be from in this side or in this side, both ways x can go, but we need only one degree of freedom or one independent coordinate in order to determine the motion, right. Once we write the energy expression, things changes. Look at the energy expression. So, energy here is the vibrational energy only. So, we call it the EV. This is half m x dot square plus half k x square. Okay. So, thermodynamically there are 2 degrees of freedom, whereas according to classical mechanics there is only 1 degree of freedom. Now, there is a conflict. So, we follow the thermodynamic definition and compute the degree of freedom of vibrating gas molecules. Now, let us go back here, go back to this. For this system, once again if we consider vibrational degree of freedom present, that means the molecule that can vibrate along this axis. Please remember it is a 2-dimensional molecule. So, vibration is possible only along the bond axis. Once again, this although it is a 2-body problem, it can be effectively reduced to a simple one body problem, and we can write an we can define a system which has an equivalent spring constant and a single mass is moving. So, we have to have one vibrational independent coordinate for vibration. Okay. So, because we do not have that much time, we are not going into the details of this independent coordinates and all, but I think you all understand that if this diatomic molecule vibrates, we need to have one coordinate, I am not talking about degree of freedom, one coordinate in order to describe the motion. Okay. So, now if I go back here, at present we have 3 translation and 2 rotations, as we have already described. Moment to introduce vibration in a diatomic molecule system, how many more degrees of freedom do we need? We need 2 more degrees of freedom, because each vibrational normal mode, as we call it, contributes to 2 degrees of freedom, right. Okay. So, we have 5 and it will be 7 if we consider vibration. Okay. So, please keep this in mind, moment you have one vibration, you need to have 2 degrees of freedom added to the total numbers, because if you add 1 it will be a mistake, right. So, now let us first of all, why are we discussing this? I mean, in our case the gas molecules, they just translate, I mean we do not consider the vibration at all in the kinetic theory. But it turns out that vibration is also important, because there is something called the equipartition theorem that says in thermal equilibrium at a finite temperature T, the energy per molecule per degree of freedom is half kBT. This theory also used to explain specific heat of solids, which will be discussed later on. Okay. So, this is the what you call the theory that gives us a very very elegant, not very elegant, but very straightforward and simple tool to calculate or estimate the total energy of a gas assembly by using equipartition theorem, and from there we can compute the heat capacity of a gas assembly. Okay. So, how do we calculate that? The total energy is all kinetic energy, which is equivalent to the internal energy of the system, because that is the only source of energy we have. So, internal energy of an ideal gas assembly is the kinetic energy. Okay. or rather I should say internal energy that is usable in a thermodynamic process. Of course, you all know that formula of E equal to m0 c square by that is the most famous formula by Einstein, but that is the rest mass energy that is omnipresent everywhere. But in thermodynamic processes, the only energy we are worried about is the kinetic energy for a gas assembly or the internal energy. Now, for a gas assembly, ideal gas assembly, internal energy is equivalent to kinetic energy, right. So, if we have a gas assembly with f degrees of freedom, okay, I will just write this in bold so that you understand. Sorry, f degrees of freedom, then U is equal to f by 2 n kBT, where n is the total number of molecules, because each degree of freedom will contribute half kBT. Total number of total number of degree of freedom is f. So, we multiply it by f and we multiply the total number with n, which is the total number in gas assembly. So, rather I would just break it just for your convenience. It will be half kBT times f times n. So, 3 terms for 3 contribution. So, CV is equal to del U del T V, which will be equal to half f n kb, which is half f r, because we all know that n kb is equal to r. That was discussed in the very first lecture. Similarly, Cp, which is Cv plus r, once again for ideal gas only, okay, because this relation is valid only for ideal gas, and later we will see that Cp minus Cv is not equal to R for a non-ideal gas, but for ideal gas we can write, we just add R to this expression and we can write Cp is equal to R times 1 plus F by 2. Then what is the value of gamma, which is Cp by Cv, which is also a very important constant for gases, and we will see more and more why this gamma is useful to us, and the ratio is 1 plus 2 by F. Okay. So, we take 3 examples, quick examples. One is the monoatomic gas, where we have F equal to 3, we have Cv is equal to 3 R by 2, Cp is equal to 5 R by 2 and gamma equal to 5 by 3. Rigid diatomic gas, when we do not consider vibration, then F is equal to 5 only, we have Cv is equal to 5 R by 2, Cp is equal to 7 R by 2, gamma is equal to 7 by 5, and non-rigid diatomic gas with F equal to 7. We have discussed that, because once we have vibration, we add 2 degrees of freedom with the existing ones. For each vibrational mode, we add 2 degrees of freedom with the existing one. So, for diatomic gas, if it is 5, then diatomic vibrating gas, it will be 7. So, we have Cv equal to 7 R by 2, Cp equal to 9 R by 2, gamma equal to 9 by 7. Okay. So, quickly look at, but then all this looks very nice, but does it tally experiment with the experimental results? That is very important, because as I have already said probably in the first class itself, if not, then let me say this now. If and only if the observed experimental results are at par with the theory, only then the theory is correct, otherwise the theory has some problem. Okay. So, what happens is experimentally we see that for gas molecules at moderate to high temperature, the equipartition theorem is more or less closely followed. But sometimes there are considerable deviations at low temperature, especially when we try to explain the specific heat of solids using the same theory. We will not discuss that at present, but we will keep it for future when we will be, before going into the classical thermodynamics, we will have a quick discussion on the specific heat capacities of solid. And we will just end this lecture by showing you now I will show you data on hydrogen molecule. Now, this is the data for hydrogen molecule. So, this is H2 gas phase, right. Now, the plot shows temperature versus Cv for H2 in gas phase. Now, first of all, let me tell you that the last part of the plot is kind of hypothetical in nature, because what happens is around this temperature the molecule dissociates. Look at the temperature scale, it is around 2000 Kelvin. Now, 2000 Kelvin is a high enough temperature, so that the molecule does not stay in this H2 form anymore, it becomes separates it separates into 2 H atoms. But anyway, the actual experimentally measured trend is found up till this point, and after that this is more of a extension, hypothetical extension. But what is important here is hydrogen is a diatomic molecule. Now, for a diatomic molecule we should have, for a rigid diatomic molecule we should have a Cv value of 5 by 2 R. Just now we have seen that from here. So, it should be 5 by 2 R, and we are getting 5 by 2 R somewhere between let us say 300 Kelvin to all the way to 500 or 600 Kelvin in this range, which is absolutely fine. So, in this case, in this temperature region, it is like a rigid diatomic molecule. Now, what happens is below 200 degree centigrades, 200 degree Kelvin, 200 Kelvin, the Cv value starts changing downwards, and at very low temperature, roughly around 50 Kelvin or below, it levels off to 3/2 R. Now, what is 3/2 R? Let us go back here. Yeah. So, 3/2 R is, that is for the monoatomic gas. Now, hydrogen we know that it is a diatomic gas, but why then we are getting 3/2 R in this region? The reason being, at very low temperature, even in gas phase, please remember that in order to maintain this gas phase at a very low temperature, we have to have very low pressure inside this chamber. But whatever may be the experimental setup, we are not going into the details of that. But at very low temperature, let us say below 50 Kelvin or so, the molecule does not have enough energy to execute the rotation. So, only movement that is possible is the translation. Now, why it is not possible to execute the rotation? In order to do we understand that, we have to go into the details of quantum mechanics, details of vibrational and rotational spectrum. We are not or details of rotational spectrum. We are not going into that, but let me tell you that the rotational levels are frozen, because even the thermal energy is not sufficient for the second rotational energy level to attend. Okay, so, we will come back to that in the next lecture in some more details, what is thermal energy and why it is important. Of course, we have some idea by now, but we will go into the details of that. So, here in this region, this behaves like a monoatomic gas, monoatomic molecule. Although we know that the molecule is diatomic in nature, but because of the very low available thermal energy, we have a monoatomic behavior in this region. As the temperature increases, the motion starts unfreezing. So, that means the rotational motion is slowly and slowly possible, okay? And around 200 degrees or slightly above 200 degrees, it starts behaving like a proper rigid diatomic molecule. But again, even at this temperature, the vibrational modes are not active. So, the thermal energy, available thermal energy is not sufficient for the vibrational modes to be activated. Once again, we will go into the details of that in the next lecture. And for the last part, and then what happens is, around this temperature, around 600, 700 degree centigrades, it starts getting enough thermal energy, 700 degree Kelvin, 700 Kelvin, it starts getting enough thermal energy, so that the vibrational modes are getting activated, and eventually around before up to the dissociation temperature of approximately 2000 Kelvin, we start seeing an upward trend. Now, hypothetically, if we extend the experimental data, we finally get the 7/2 R value, which is the specific heat or CV for a vibrating diatomic molecule. Okay. So, this is what the molecular hydrogen looks like. Last, we will talk about triatomic molecules, which is slightly complicated in nature. Just a minute. Triatomic molecules. Now, what is triatomic molecule? Triatomic molecule could be a linear molecule, could be a non-linear molecule. So, we have two broad classes of that. One is the linear, where we have a molecule of this form. Okay. It can have two types of vibration. If the molecule stays linear all throughout, it can have two types of vibration. One is called the symmetric stretch, and the other one is called the asymmetric stretch. In symmetric stretch, the central molecule stays stationary, and we can have these two molecules going in or out. In asymmetric stretch, we can have this molecule and this atom going in this direction, whereas the central atom is going in that direction, and in the next cycle, this one will go into that direction, whereas this ones will be coming into that direction, and overall the CV, that is the CM, that is the center of mass of the molecule, stays stationary. So, this is called the symmetric stretch and the antisymmetric stretch of a linear molecule, linear triatomic molecule. Now, there are two normal modes, and this will contribute to 2 into half kT of energy, and this will contribute to 2 into half kT of energy. So, altogether there will be kT plus kT, 2 kT of energy. And in case of a non-linear molecule, for example, water. Water is a non-linear molecule. We have H, we have O, and we have H. Let us take the example of water. We have oxygen, hydrogen, and hydrogen. Motion can be really complicated. If it is a linear triatomic molecule, which is actually, I should say that we can have, let us consider the linear triatomic molecule also. Let us call it stretching. And in case we have bending. Okay. So, for the linear triatomic molecule also we can have bending. For example, carbon dioxide, we will take up an example where we can have two bending modes, in which in one this one goes up, this one goes up, this one comes down, okay. And in the other one, this one goes into the plane. So, we just mark it with a negative sign, or rather cross sign, and this one comes out, we mark it with a dot sign. So, basically these two modes are degenerate. So, they basically mean the same thing, but they are degenerate in nature. So, that is why in one case the bending is taking place in the plane of the paper, and in other case the bending is taking place in the plane perpendicular to the plane of this paper. So, these two are the two bending modes which are degenerate, exactly similar, but can take place simultaneously. So, each of this will contribute to 2 into half kT, that is kT of energy. So, altogether we can have once again 2 kT, or I should say this one contributes kBT of energy, this one contributes kBT of energy. So, altogether we have 2 kBT of energy for the bending for a linear triatomic molecule. Now, for the non-linear triatomic molecule, it is even more complicated. Non-linear triatomic. Okay. For non-linear triatomic molecule, we can have many different types of stretching and bending possible. We are not going into this at this point. For water for example, as far as I remember, I can be wrong, there are at least 7 different vibrational modes. So, it becomes very complicated. Up to diatomic molecule, it is straightforward. Diatomic molecule, we have either only one type of vibration that will give rise to 2 kT of, or rather half into 2 kT, that means kT of total of kT times the number of molecule amount of energy. But in case of linear triatomic molecule, we have once again, if we have only stretching vibration, there are 2, if we have bending vibration, there are 2. Up to this it is still manageable, but when it comes to nonlinear triatomic molecules, it depends on what type of molecule we have and how many bending modes or vibrational modes are possible. It could be stretching, bending and many other movements. So, it becomes very complicated. So, in general, the general treatment is, if we know that there are f degrees of freedom associated with vibration of a molecule, or rather f, I should say n modes of vibration, then we have f is equal to 2n number of degrees of freedom. Please remember, one vibrational mode will contribute to 2 degrees of freedom. So, it becomes very complicated unless and until we know exact number of normal modes associated with this vibration, we cannot deal with a complicated molecule. Okay. So, that is where we stop today, and in the next class we will be starting with the concept of temperature and energy scale. Okay. Thank you.